Yangmin, with determined eyes, straightforwardly declared he would go to the lair of Bang Tiju, the gang leader and also the one who bullied his younger brother. Yangmin looked directly at Wonnie, clearly confirming his target. "Bang Tiju is bothering you." Those words stunned Wonnie. Wonnie asked in panic, his voice trembling, unable to believe that Yangmin knew about his bullying. He had always kept it a secret. Yangmin replied, his eyes full of resolve as if it had always been obvious to him. "You think I didn't know?" Wonnie lowered his head, his mind in turmoil. He didn't want to reveal that he was being bullied, because he didn't want to make his brother, who had always endured, worry anymore. Yangmin bowed his head apologetically to Won, his voice quiet but sincere. Though cold on the outside, now he showed his true feelings. Yangmin admitted he had no idea Won was being bullied. At that time, he completely failed to realize the burden his younger brother was bearing alone. Yangmin recalled the moment he learned the truth, just a few hours after returning from the first round in another world. The early morning light through the window revealed his heavy mood. In the small room, Won quietly left while Yangmin was still asleep. He only left a soft sentence. "Hi, Young, I'm going out for a bit." Yangmin's reflective voice echoed. The younger brother who left that day never returned the same. The phone rang incessantly. Yangmin just woke up, irritated by the ringing, unaware of the bad news waiting. Yangmin was shocked when receiving a call in the middle of the night. The caller confirmed he was the guardian of a student named Ryuwon. The caller's urgent voice requested Yangmin to come to the hospital immediately, signaling that something serious had happened to his younger brother. Without hesitation, Yangmin rushed out the door in a hurry, leaving behind the quiet, dark room. Returning from the hospital, Yangmin could only sit silently in the corner, holding his shoulder. Ryuwon, his younger brother, had been beaten blind by Bang Tiju, the brutal bully. The once weak and helpless younger brother now stood in the shadows. He blamed himself for being too naive and unable to protect himself. In the silent night, the main character clenched his fists, torment surging inside. He blamed himself for not being able to protect Ryuwon, his only younger brother. A deep and firm voice echoed through the empty street. "I will not let anyone harm you again." The main character's eyes shone with determination. The night scene shifted to another place. An old warehouse echoed with sounds of smashing. Something fierce was about to begin. A stranger was struck with a powerful punch, screaming in pain. The revenge had officially begun. A leader wearing a black fur jacket, Bang Tiju himself, was shouting at trembling students on the ground. He demanded protection money, 200,000 won from each. He was the one who took away Ryuwon's sight. Ryuwon curled up on the floor, trembling in pain. A large man stood before him, shouting loudly, showing annoyance at the lack of response. Bang Tiju, the notorious thug, went mad. He angrily rushed forward and kicked the unresisting boy hard. The gang members outside cheered and praised Tiju's cruelty as something natural. They saw it as the prowess of a leader. One of the gang members spoke up, saying Tiju made even senior gang leaders from other schools bow down. They discussed that no one should ever mess with him. Bang Tiju scratched his head while grumbling. He regretted not collecting enough money as planned to buy a motorcycle, then blamed the useless guys he was tormenting. Bang Tiju angrily asked his gang if there was anywhere to get money. A bullied kid answered fearfully, stammering and unsure what to say. Unsatisfied with the answer, Tiju ordered his gang to come up with a way to make money. The group began to think awkwardly, clearly having no concrete ideas. One of the three gang members suddenly had an idea, and shouted as if he had thought of something important. He suggested calling Bang Tiju's errand boy, a tall student with curly hair, referring to Ryuwon. The group agreed with the idea. Bang Tiju recognized the person mentioned as Ryuwon and smiled maliciously. He said he had planned to call Ryuwon today, and even hinted at wanting to beat him to celebrate the new year. Following the bald guy's suggestion, Bang Tiju's gang unanimously agreed to extort money from the mentioned person. They thought it was a feasible plan. Bang Tiju turned around, his tone contemptuous, interrupting his gang. He emphasized that the guy was worthless, just a useless person, and there was no hope of getting money from him. With a disdainful smile, Tiju recounted that despite being severely beaten, that guy still couldn't bring a single penny. He even mocked the victim's home as shabby, indirectly indicating extreme poverty. The whole gang froze when Tiju coldly revealed, "That guy doesn't have parents." The words exposed the bitter truth about Ryuwon's situation, a poor orphan student and a target of inhumane abuse. Bang Tiju fell silent as he remembered Ryuwon lived with his older brother. That statement strangely made the atmosphere in the group heavy. The prolonged silence caused one gang member to voice his confusion, while Tiju stood still, his expression stiffened. The gang didn't understand what was going on in his mind. At that moment, the door burst open. Ryuwon appeared with determined eyes, standing next to his older brother with black hair wearing a white jacket. Their appearance completely changed the atmosphere. Tiju initially froze in surprise, but then broke into a sneering smile. "So it's Ryuwon," he muttered, trying to hide his initial worry behind a fake, confident face. "Ha, speak of the devil," Tiju mocked, igniting familiar ridicule with an arrogant attitude. He looked at Ryuwon with a provocative gaze. The contempt quickly turned into anger. Tiju shouted furiously, "Ryuwon, you're such a bastard!" His voice echoing through the space, signaling an imminent explosion. Ryuwon and his older brother stepped onto the rooftop, light behind casting their shadows. Ryuwon apologized awkwardly, while his brother kept a cold, unwavering gaze. Bang Tiju glared at the older brother, his face gradually changing color. His inner discomfort was clear. "That guy's expression really annoys me." Tiju yelled at Ryuwon, angry thinking he had brought someone to cause trouble. He and 3 gang members stepped forward, ready to suppress the newcomer. The older brother stepped forward, his eyes sharp and smile cold. He introduced himself briefly but with full authority. "I am Wonnie's brother." Tiju gritted his teeth, clenching his fists with hatred, believing Ryuwon had tattled. He growled threateningly, "Today you and your brother are dead." Bang Tiju crossed his arms, standing proudly in the arena, showing arrogance and dominance as usual. The gang behind him was excited, mocking the errand boy, Ryuwon, for daring to bring his brother to confront Tiju. 3 gang members quickly ran over, laughing gleefully, thinking they were about to witness the usual lesson. One curiously asked Ryuwon if his brother knew how to fight. Ryuwon stood silently, Tiju's shadow stretching long behind him, symbolizing the pressure Ryuwon had endured. But now he was no longer alone. The masked gang member arrogantly stepped forward to provoke Ryuwon's older brother, placing his hand on his head as if mocking him. His face was sneering, completely disregarding his opponent. In an instant, a thunderous punch from Ryuwon's brother struck the man's face, sending him flying before he could react. No warning, just decisive action. As the black-haired masked gang member mocked and challenged, Ryuwon's brother acted swiftly, delivering a powerful punch that violently threw him back, blood splattering everywhere. The sudden scene shocked the light brown-haired gang member, who shouted in astonishment upon seeing his comrade knocked away with a single blow. Unable to contain his anger, the light brown-haired gang member charged forward, yelling curses and calling Ryuwon and his brother bastards. However, as soon as he charged, he was immediately countered by Ryuwon's brother with a high strike, easily dodging and neatly counterattacking. With superior strength, Ryuwon's brother delivered a thunderous punch to the opponent's face, sending him flying backward with a distorted face and blood spurting from his mouth, ending the attack in an instant. The light brown-haired student was kicked powerfully by Ryuwon's brother, flying straight into several metal barrels behind, his body uncontrollably suspended midair. The remaining 2 of Tiju's gang, the bald student and the black-haired masked student, grew angry and rushed together to attack Ryuwon's brother in fury. Before they could touch their opponent, both were immediately countered. A flash of blue electricity sparked from the thunderous punch, striking both in the face and causing them to fall backward. All 3 of Tiju's gang lay sprawled on the ground, groaning in pain. In the distance, Ryuwon and his disheveled-haired friend stood silently watching, while Tiju began trembling with rage. Though scared, Tiju forced a twisted, mocking smile. He reassured himself that the opponent was just a bookworm, a weakling disguised as a hero. Bang Tiju squinted and sneered, believing Ryuwon's brother had only learned some boxing moves somewhere and recklessly thought that was enough to face him. Tiju stepped closer while taunting, calling Ryuwon's brother Wonnie's Hyung, and claiming he was just trying to act tough because he had learned a few boxing tricks. Standing close, Tiju arrogantly mocked that the opponent probably never learned about boxing weight classes, implying he was too small to fight him. Ryuwon's brother smiled meaningfully and replied gently, "Then you haven't been watching the news." Tiju growled, "What news?" while Ryuwon's brother's expression was just a contemptuous pout, signaling something was about to happen. Bang Tiju shouted angrily, swinging his fist toward Ryuwon's brother, demanding he explain the news he just mentioned. But facing the furious punch, Wonnie's Hyung remained calm, his eyes unafraid, tracking the incoming strike. Tiju charged like a furious flying squirrel, unleashing immense power with his whole body to crush his opponent. Still enraged, Tiju continued to rush from above, shouting "Bastard!" as he lunged forward with his entire body. Yet in that space, Tiju sensed something very strange. Everything around Ryuwon's brother seemed distorted, warped. Another reality was unfolding. Tiju began to panic. He panted heavily, wondering why he couldn't land a single hit on his opponent. All efforts became meaningless. In response, Ryuwon's brother slowly clenched his fist. A blue energy flame surrounded his body. He said, "If you had been watching the news, you would know never to attack." The blazing fist was thrown, rushing straight into Tiju's face. "A player like me." Ryuwon's older brother unleashed a punch with a powerful burst of green energy, striking Bang Tiju's face directly. The forceful blow left the opponent no time to react. The punch sent Bang Tiju flying backward, losing control. He fell painfully, his face showing horror at being defeated so quickly. A new henchman appeared, a fat male student wearing a fur jacket and gray pants. Stepping out from behind, his face shocked to see his leader knocked down. The henchman angrily shouted, "You!" then charged forward, ready to attack Ryuwon's older brother with all his strength. Bang Tiju jumped up, shouting in rage, calling the opponent a damn crazy bastard. But Ryuwon's older brother had vanished from his sight, leaving him confused as he looked around, unsure where his target had gone. Bang Tiju's eyes widened in panic as he realized something. His face changed color and he exclaimed fearfully, "Don't tell me." Immediately after, Ryuwon's older brother delivered an extremely powerful punch to Tiju's face. A fierce burst of blue energy erupted, making his body feel like it was about to shatter. Tiju clutched his face and staggered backward. He choked on his words, struggling to say, "You. I only needed one punch to take you down." Blood flowed from Tiju's nose onto his hand. One of his teeth had fallen out, lying in his palm. The undeniable truth left him speechless. Humiliation turned into furious rage. Tiju's face flushed red as he screamed in anger, "I will kill you." Bang Tiju roared in fury, throwing a deadly punch at Ryuwon's older brother, shouting, "Die!" But his furious attack was easily stopped. Ryuwon's older brother coldly grabbed Tiju's wrist without flinching. Immediately, he launched a powerful counterpunch to Tiju's face, causing him to stagger in pain. Beaten badly, Tiju coughed hoarsely and swayed, while the surrounding henchmen could only watch anxiously. Tiju gritted his teeth, realizing something terrifying. The opponent deliberately targeted his face. The feeling of humiliation overwhelmed the physical pain. The blond, muscular man, covered in blood and rage, shouted, "Die!" and threw his final full-force punch at the protagonist, the young man in the blue jacket. But the other's gaze remained calm and unshaken. Just as the punch was about to land, the protagonist slightly tilted his body, narrowly dodging. The blond man's arm swung through the air, panic evident in his eyes. The young man with cold eyes quickly counterattacked, delivering a strong punch to the opponent's face. Blood splattered as the blond man's head snapped back from the force. The entire warehouse scene appeared. The blond man collapsed in pain while the protagonist stood firm and composed. The surrounding students were shocked, sweating nervously as they witnessed a scene beyond imagination. The blond man gritted his teeth, muttering inwardly, "Damn!" He deliberately aimed for my face. He began to realize the terrifying gap between them, both in skill and mentality. Bang Tiju collapsed, his body trembling in pain. The protagonist stood before him, coldly calling out his name, "Bang Tiju." Still maintaining a calm gaze, the protagonist asked softly but hauntingly, "Does it hurt a lot?" In the darkness, memories of that day flooded back. Despite countless time reversals, the emotions of that day remained deeply engraved in his mind. A fear that could never be forgot. That haunting past made him determined never to fall into that hell again. Bang Tiju panicked, gasping for breath and continuously retreating, begging him not to come closer. Facing the silent fury from his opponent, Bang Tiju abandoned his initial arrogance. In desperation, he looked up pleadingly, "Please, stop." Bang Tiju shrank back in horror as the protagonist, Ryuwon's older brother, approached. In that moment, Tiju could only tremble, staring at the hands closing in on his face. The protagonist smiled coldly, gripping Tiju's hand, and clearly enunciating each word. "So it turns out you shouldn't have touched my little brother." Bang Tiju was stunned, his expression turning to extreme fear. His eyes rolled back, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth, leaving him unable to resist. Tiju's whole body trembled violently. He screamed in bone-deep pain as his fingers were bent backward little by little. Mad screams echoed through the warehouse as Tiju writhed in agony with his hand tightly gripped. The protagonist remained calm and ruthless without hesitation. Bang Tiju's eyes widened in horror, tears streaming down. He He screamed desperately, as if realizing something terrible was about to happen that he could not stop. Tijiu's screams echoed throughout the dark warehouse. The henchmen, terrified, immediately fled, shouting and pushing each other to escape the scene, leaving their leader struggling on the ground. A friend of Ryuwon, name unknown, black hair, wearing a white jacket, also shouted in shock upon witnessing the horrific scene, trembling all over from the shock. Ryuwon's older brother stepped closer to the trembling Bang Tijiu on the ground. His tone was cold but clear. "Bang Tijiu, touch my little brother again and... you know what will happen, right?" Tijiu stammered, begging and promising never to dare touch Ryuwon again. Ryuwon's older brother smiled lightly, but his eyes remained sharp. "That's right." But his smile did not end there. A silent threat crept in as he continued. "But you know." Ryuwon's older brother coldly squeezed Bang Tijiu's hand, saying, "No one knows when you'll change your mind, so I have to be sure." Bang Tijiu panicked, his face pale, crying and begging. A horrifying scream rang out. The viewpoint shifted outside the building. Bang Tijiu's cries pierced through the walls, causing the glass to vibrate in the night. When everything ended, Ryuwon's older brother quietly walked out of the building. His younger brother, still shocked, softly called, "Hayoung." On the way, the younger brother hesitated and asked, "Just now, how did you do that? Did you learn martial arts?" He still couldn't believe what he had just witnessed. Ryuwon's older brother turned with a mysterious smile. "Didn't you read the article carefully? Players can use their powers in the real world too." The younger brother was stunned and blurted out, "But how is that possible?" Ryuwon's older brother smiled calmly and raised his hand, summoning a radiant golden energy. In Ryuwon's astonished eyes, the energy began swirling around his palm like a living magic. From within the light, a sharp knife with a strange design gradually appeared. Ryuwon's eyes widened, unable to believe what he was seeing. Ryuwon gasped in shock as he witnessed the knife materialize from thin air. His older brother smiled calmly and explained that they, players, could summon weapons from another world right in the real world. Ryuwon grew more curious and asked if his brother's agile movements earlier were also powers from the other world. He was surprised recalling how easily his brother dodged Bang Tijiu's punches. His older brother nodded in confirmation, explaining that it was thanks to his agility stat being at level 11. With an average person at 3 and an athlete at 10, he clearly surpassed human limits. On the way back, Wonnie curiously asked, "So what if you level up later?" Wonnie's older brother casually replied, "I don't know, I've never reached that level." However, when the camera shifted to the older brother's inner perspective, he admitted in his thoughts, "Of course, that was a lie." In a dark and lonely scene, the protagonist continued his monologue. "I didn't intend to tell Wonnie that I am a regressor. On the 11th regression, I told him everything. And then a player kidnapped Wonnie." The frame showed the back of a strange man wearing a floral shirt, standing under cold light, the very person who caused the tragedy. The protagonist bowed his head slightly, his eyes silent but determined. "I took revenge, but I don't want my little brother to suffer that humiliation because of me." The protagonist pondered deeply. He realized that in the future, as more players confront each other, he must become stronger to protect his little brother, Wonnie. But first, a sound from his stomach reminded him of something more important right now: hunger. He smiled and turned to ask, "Wonnie, want to have breakfast at the convenience store?" He knew well that his brother was hungry. Wonnie nodded in agreement, his eyes still innocent as always. "Yeah." The two entered the QS-24 convenience store. The peaceful atmosphere and morning sunlight shining through the awning seemed to temporarily wash away all the storms that had occurred. Wonnie headed toward the instant noodle shelf but turned back when he saw his brother turn in another direction. "Hayoung, where are you going? The noodles are this way." His brother smiled lightly. "Yeah, wait for me a moment." Wonnie's older brother pulled out a bank card and approached the ATM. His gaze was calm but resolute. A small action, yet a sign of the preparation and responsibility he bore, not only for himself but also for his brother. Walking beside Ryuwon, the protagonist silently thought about the future. He realized that in the upcoming battles between players, he must always be ready to protect his younger brother. A rumbling stomach interrupted his thoughts. He immediately turned to invite Ryuwon into the convenience store for breakfast, correctly guessing that his brother was hungry. The two arrived at the QS-24 store. The peaceful early morning atmosphere seemed to conceal the secrets and dangers that only the older brother bore. Ryuwon was surprised to see his older brother not heading toward the instant noodle aisle. The protagonist simply replied, "Wait a moment," and proceeded to the ATM, inserting his card. While withdrawing money, the protagonist silently thought about the precious savings he was about to use. The screen showed. He withdrew 100,000 won from a total of only 133,000 won, almost all the money he had. Ryuwon's older brother gently scolded him because even though it was the new year, he still intended to eat instant noodles. Ryuwon worriedly asked if spending money on this meal would leave enough for the coming days. His brother reassured him and urged him to choose whatever he liked. Encouraged, Ryuwon excitedly grabbed a box of grilled pork belly with red chili sauce, a dish he had long wanted to try. His face lit up with joy. Ryuwon smiled brightly, eagerly sharing that he had wanted to try this dish for a long time. His older brother looked at him gently and smiled in agreement. Ryuwon's older brother gently promised that one day they would go together to a proper restaurant and eat whatever they wanted, like Hanwoo beef. He hoped to make up for his brother after all the hardships. Ryuwon laughed shyly, saying they couldn't afford Hanwoo beef, but the canned meat was already enough to make him happy. That simple joy brought them closer in a peaceful moment. As his gaze turned toward Wonnie, his older brother silently vowed. In the future, he must be ready to protect his brother from the battles between players. His rumbling stomach echoed amid those troubled thoughts. The older brother gently turned and asked, "Wonnie, do you want to have breakfast at the convenience store?" The boy was surprised, then softly replied, "Yes." His face lit up at the unexpected invitation. The two brothers entered the QS24 store. While Wonnie headed toward the familiar instant noodle section, the older brother turned toward the ATM. The older brother inserted his card and withdrew money with a serious look. He was using his meager savings, just over 130,000 won, for this special breakfast. Seeing him withdraw two 50,000 won bills, Wonnie asked in surprise why. The brother just smiled and replied softly, "I need it for something." Then he turned and pointed to the fridge, saying, "Pick whatever you want, Wonnie." While enjoying his meal, Ryuwon suddenly looked at his older brother. Before he could understand what was happening, he saw him approach the table with a serious demeanor. Ryuwon's older brother placed something heavily on the table, causing everything to shake. It was a pen, signaling a decisive and purposeful action. Ryuwon's eyes widened in surprise as he realized his brother had just placed a stack of lottery tickets on the table. He stammered, "Don't tell me you withdrew all that money just to buy Nato lottery tickets." Ryuwon's older brother smiled calmly and confirmed, "Yes." Seeing his brother's shocked reaction, he added, 20 tickets. Ryuwon shouted in panic, unable to believe his ears. He yelled, "What? Why spend 100,000 won just to buy lottery tickets? You're not even sure you'll win." While Wonnie was still confused, his older brother, the one wearing the blue jacket, began marking the lottery tickets with the pen. Wonnie watched anxiously as he performed this strange action. Wonnie cried out in alarm, seeing his brother act so confidently. He didn't understand what was going on and began to feel uneasy. Before Wonnie were rows of lottery tickets marked side by side. He was astonished and asked why his brother chose all those consecutive numbers. This action seemed unusual and suspicious. With fiery, determined eyes, Wonnie's older brother smiled confidently and replied, "Because this is the winning number sequence." His words struck a huge shock in Wonnie's mind. Could it really be true? Two young men, one wearing an orange and white hoodie, the other in dark blue, sat around a simple small table, preparing to watch the 1049th Nato lottery draw. On the table were lottery tickets, bathed in soft yellow light, creating an atmosphere of tense anticipation. The young man in the orange hoodie, Wonnie himself, silently bit his nails, his eyes full of worry. He muttered, convinced that both of them were doomed because they had thrown away 100,000 won on those tickets. The lottery machine started operating. Wonnie grew even more uneasy, regretting that he should have spent the money on delicious food instead. His friend in the blue hoodie reminded him, "Wonnie, stop biting your nails." The lucky numbers were announced one by one, 3, then 18. Wonnie kept staring at his phone, his eyes tense as each number matched those his older brother had marked. The matches continued. Number 9, then 38. When the fifth number was about to be announced, Wonnie's eyes showed astonishment and disbelief, swallowing hard amid anxiety mixed with hope. The results of the 1049th Nato draw were officially announced. The lucky numbers were 3, 18, 9, 38, 21, 1, and the supplementary number was 5. The two young men watched intently on their phones, the atmosphere thick with tension. The curly-haired young man in the orange hoodie stared at the ticket in his hand in shock. His eyes lit up, his mouth trembling as he exclaimed, "We won first prize?" Joy exploded as the truth unfolded before them. Tears welling up, he shakily asked, Hyung, can you pinch my cheek? A small expression appeared on the older brother's face. Pinch yourself. Amid the emotion, their belief in miracles seemed confirmed. Still unable to believe his eyes, he turned to look at his brother. This isn't a dream, right? The older brother just smiled softly, holding up the phone displaying the winning results, affirming that everything was real. In a cute chibi drawing, the curly-haired boy asked, "Do you think this is a dream?" The older brother asked back, "Do you want it to be a dream?" Without hesitation, he shook his head firmly. No way. The young man in the orange hoodie still couldn't believe his eyes, repeatedly asking his brother if it was real. The young man in the dark blue hoodie smiled reassuringly, confirming that they were not dreaming. Unable to contain his excitement, the younger brother shouted loudly and raised the lottery ticket high into the air, proclaiming that they had won first prize, his eyes shining with overwhelming joy. In a humorous chibi version, the younger brother still raised his hand excitedly, but the older brother gently reminded him to lower his voice so the neighbors wouldn't hear. The young man in the dark blue hoodie asked, "Are you really that happy?" And the younger brother replied with sparkling eyes, "Of course, what about you?" The older brother smiled gently, confirming that he was also very happy. Deep down, he recalled the first time he was sure of winning the Natto numbers. He had also shouted with joy. When he was still amazed, clutching the lottery ticket tightly while the main character, the regressed older brother, joyfully confirmed, "We won first prize." Even after hearing it repeatedly, Wonnie still asked nervously, as if to make sure he wasn't dreaming. A flashback appeared in the main character's mind. Winning the lottery was no longer a surprise. For him, after dozens of regressions, buying lottery tickets to win had become a habit, a necessary ritual every time he started over. He recalled the old tragic world, one that witnessed 900 million deaths. A world in crisis where the economy began to collapse. Images of tombstones and white flowers evoked loss and sacrifices he had endured. The scene shifted to a fantasy world, where equipment and magical weapons shone brightly. The main character understood clearly. In the near future, item trading among players would explode and all would need cash. Therefore, accumulating finances was essential for survival. When he was still in shock, holding a stack of winning tickets in his hands, exclaiming in amazement, "Unbelievable! Winning all 100 tickets. How big is the prize?" The main character simply replied, "Not sure," but deep down he knew this was the start of a jackpot that would change the world. In front of the Manhwa bank, the main character, a repeatedly regressed young man, approached with a calm demeanor. His goal today was to claim the first prize from the Natto lottery ticket, whose result he already knew. Passing by the security guards, the main character remained composed amidst the crowd. With experience winning dozens of times through regressions, he was not worried like the first time. Standing before the counter, he calmly informed the bank staff, "I'm here to claim the first prize." His face showed no confusion, as if this was just a familiar repeated step. The bank employee smiled politely, congratulating the young customer. He had not yet realized that the person before him was no ordinary individual, but someone who had undergone countless regressions and money-accumulating strategies. Another employee nearby looked at him suspiciously. In his mind, he wondered, "First prize in Natto, but he looks more like a student." The main character's cold expression and calm demeanor made him even more puzzled. The bank employee asked where the main character bought the ticket. He replied briefly, "QS24 Yonwi store." Hearing the answer, the bank employee was stunned, exclaiming in surprise, "What?" The bank employee's expression turned serious. He recalled that the QS24 Yonwi store had sold 100 of the first prize tickets out of the total 115 Natto wins this time. Another person also arrived and confirmed this shocking news. The newly arrived man confirmed that 100 out of 115 winning tickets were sold at a single store. He expressed amazement at how crazy the situation was. Another employee asked suspiciously, "So did one person buy them all?" His face clearly showing confusion. A bank employee received instructions from the manager. "If anyone claims to have bought tickets at QS24 Yonwi, immediately call the bank president. That person would be considered an extremely important VVIP customer." The employee was surprised, recalling that Ryuman had also mentioned this place. The bank employee politely asked Ryuman to wait a moment while processing the information. Ryuman agreed, waiting calmly. After a while, an older man in a luxurious suit came out to greet Ryuman with a warm smile. "Thank you for waiting." The man introduced himself as Kwon Junho, president of Manhwa Bank. Ryuman politely responded, My name is Ryumin. President Kwon Junho congratulated Ryumin on winning the NATO first prize. Ryumin smiled and replied, "Thank you." Kwon Junho, president of Nongayap Bank, politely suggested Ryumin move to a more comfortable place to complete the prize claim procedures. He personally escorted Ryumin, showing special respect. Both proceeded to an office with a sign reading Lottery Business Department. Kwon Junho opened the door and invited Ryumin inside, maintaining a warm and professional smile. Upon entering the office, a female bank employee immediately stood up to welcome them. She was surprised to see the president personally arrive with a young, unfamiliar man. The female employee silently wondered if the person accompanying the president was his son, due to the unusually formal and intimate manner. Kwon Junho happily introduced Ryumin as a lucky VVIP customer coming to claim his prize. He instructed the staff to take good care of Ryumin, making the atmosphere in the room noticeably solemn. The female bank employee was stunned hearing Kwon Junho call Ryumin a VVIP customer and winner of 100 NATO rounds. Meanwhile, Ryumin maintained a calm smile. Trying to stay composed, the female employee told herself to calm down and regain her professional demeanor to properly welcome the distinguished guest. She bowed politely to Ryumin, inviting him to sit in the guest chair with utmost formality. As Ryumin sat down, the female employee gently offered him a drink. However, Ryumin politely declined and requested to handle the prize claim first. The female employee smiled warmly and nodded in response. She asked Ryumin to present the winning NATO tickets for verification. Ryumin calmly took out the stack of tickets and handed them to the bank employee, saying, "Here. These were the winning tickets from NATO Draw 1049. The bank employee carefully examined the stack of tickets. She was shocked to realize all the tickets had the same number sequence. Doubt arose in her mind. Could he really know the future? After completing the verification, the female employee confirmed to Ryumin, "You really are the winner of all 100 tickets." Her face still showed an expression of disbelief. The female employee asked further in astonishment, "What is the total prize amount?" Her expression grew tense due to the unusually large scale of the winnings. Ryumin looked at her calmly. Meanwhile, the female employee prepared to announce the figure, hesitating. Sir, your winnings are." Ryumin officially received notification of the prize money, totaling about 22.5 billion won. After tax deductions, the net amount was 15 billion won. The prize claim process went smoothly without any obstacles. After receiving the money, Ryumin immediately planned to stabilize his life. The first thing he did was search for and sign a lease for a new house for the two brothers to move into. That afternoon, Ryumin opened a stock trading account to prepare for the next step. With memories from previous regressions, he knew Bitcoin would increase fivefold next month. After that, he planned to switch to stock investments to optimize his assets. Today, Ryumin asked his younger brother, Ryuwon, about his feelings on the new house they had just leased yesterday. Ryuwon couldn't hide his excitement, saying it was the first time in his life he had seen such a large and expensive house. Ryumin explained that this house was the best immediate option with a secure system. However, Ryuwon wondered why his brother signed a lease instead of buying it outright, since with such a large sum, purchasing was entirely feasible. He was stunned when Ryumin declared that he no longer had any cash. The calm smile on Ryumin's face made the answer even more surprising. Ryumin continued, explaining that he kept only 1 billion won in cash, while the remaining 14 billion had been fully invested in Bitcoin. A 50,000 won bill fluttered around like an affirmation of his bold decision. Wonnie was completely frozen. He couldn't understand how someone who just won the jackpot could have no money immediately. His innocent expression was clearly visible on his face. Ryumin placed his hand on Wonnie's shoulder and spoke before any reproach. He knew what Wonnie was about to say, but things shouldn't be done impulsively. Ryumin already had a concrete plan for the future. He whispered into Wonnie's ear, "We can make more money from the lottery. I saw 4 numbers in a dream." The confident, secret-like statement left Wonnie surprised but unable to argue. Ryuwon was amazed when he heard his brother, Ryumin, say he had seen the winning numbers in a dream. In his mind, a light bulb went off. Could this be the legendary lottery dream everyone talks about? Ryuwon panicked and ran to shake Ryumin, reminding him to remember the numbers he saw. Meanwhile, Ryumin just smiled tiredly, reassuring his brother that he wouldn't forget because he was too used to it. Ryumin looked back at Ryuwon with a calm gaze. He thought silently, "Do you know how many times I've done this? No matter how hard I try, I can't forget." After the conversation, Ryumin stood up proactively. He told Ryuwon to go out for lunch and prepare their belongings. Ryuwon was still unclear about what was happening. Ryuman smiled, turned back, and confirmed to his brother. "Oh, haven't I told you? Today we're moving." A powerful punch like a hammer crushed the concrete wall, creating a loud noise and intense pressure. The short-haired man wearing a blue-gray jacket stood before the shattered wall. He had just delivered a mighty punch, causing the concrete to crack wide open. He smiled smugly, looking at his bloodied but proud hand. In his mind, he thought that investing all his points into strength was the right choice. His muscular power didn't come only from stats. The next punch was enveloped in a blue energy aura, as if surpassing human limits. He revealed a secret. He had drawn the muscular strength rune, a rune that doubles strength. A lucky draw, incredibly fortunate for a strength fanatic. He looked at the long crack on the wall and smiled arrogantly. This power, he believed, was enough to make even legends like Mike Tyson jealous. After the test, he clenched his fist tightly and walked decisively. It was time to stop warming up and enter the real battle he had been waiting for. A strange man loudly called out the name Ryuman while standing under the boarding house, his voice full of anger as if looking for someone to settle a score. He was the dark-skinned man with black hair, wearing a gray-blue jacket, showing irritation when Ryuman did not answer the phone. He suspected Ryuman was not injured but deliberately avoiding him. A close-up of his eyes showed an angry glare, accompanied by a muttered curse. "Arrogant bastard." The scene recalled the moment Ryuman turned his head to look at him with cold and provocative eyes amidst the nighttime crowd. That very look deeply angered him. The stranger's face appeared fierce, and he swore, "Does he think I'll let this go? He will die by my hand." The dark-skinned, tall man repeatedly pounded on Ryuman's door, his eyes burning with rage. He believed that although both were players, the loser was still just a loser. He wanted to teach Ryuman a lesson about manners. After the intense banging, he paused for a moment, silent before the closed door. In his mind, he was sure Ryuman was hiding inside but showed no reaction. He clenched his fist tightly, preparing for the next move, his eyes shining with determination. Ryuman's silence made him even more furious. Suddenly changing tone, he pretended to give up, smiling slyly and saying that guy isn't home. But that attitude was just a facade. He was testing if Ryuman would fall into the trap. Pressing close to the door, he gritted his teeth threateningly, saying that if he heard even a breath from inside, he would break in immediately. However, at that moment, a voice sounded from behind. "Excuse me, student," signaling someone else had appeared to interrupt. The old landlord noticed the stranger making noise at the door and sternly asked, "What are you doing in front of someone else's house?" The young man in the blue jacket, the one looking for Ryuman, responded provocatively, "What's that got to do with you? Are you the landlord?" The old man pushed up his glasses and replied decisively, "I am the landlord." The stranger reacted confusedly. "What?" The landlord continued asking. "Did you come to see a friend?" He muttered inside. "Friend." Pressed for answers, he quickly corrected himself. "Ah, yes, my friend. If you're the landlord, can you open the door for me?" The old man hesitated. "I was surprised I couldn't contact him. If I open it then sighed. "What a bother." The landlord gently said, "Your friend stood you up." The stranger was stunned. "What?" The old man revealed. "That house is empty now. The student who lived there just moved out today." The other man was shocked. He clenched his fists tightly, trembling with anger. That bastard dared to run away without a word. Scene change, a skyscraper appeared under the morning sun. An excited voice exclaimed, "Wow, Tilda." Ryuwon looked up at the building, overwhelmed. "It's really tall." Inside the lobby, Ryuwon excitedly shouted, "There's a revolving door too." Ryuman walked ahead, calmly entering. Ryuwon was surprised to see that access cards were issued individually. Ryuman was receiving a card from the receptionist. At the security checkpoint, the guard verified Ryuman's identity. Ryuwon was amazed. Even a personal guard. In the elevator, Ryuwon enthusiastically turned to Ryuman. "Hyung, this place is really awesome." When the elevator reached the 43rd floor, Ryuman said, "Let's get off." Ryuwon happily responded, "Yup." The apartment appeared with an extremely spacious area, high ceilings, and luxurious furnishings. Ryuwon was stunned and asked, "Hyung, how big is this place?" Ryuman answered briefly, 100 pyong. Ryuwon shouted in amazement, 100 pyong. Ryuwon wondered, "There are 2 people living here. Is it really necessary to be this big?" Ryuman replied nonchalantly, "I have a lot of money, so living lavishly is fine." Ryuwon asked further, "How much does this place cost?" Ryuman replied, "A deposit of 5 billion won, rent 22 million won per month." Ryuwon was stunned when he heard the monthly rent of the apartment was 22 million won. He almost felt like his soul left his body, recalling a time when even a 5,000 won meal made him hesitate. his heart pounding. Ryuwon worriedly suggested to Ryumin that the house was too expensive and maybe they should find a cheaper place. But Ryumin, after assessing the residence, coldly remarked, "Clean, tidy." Ryumin affirmed that the high cost was necessary. He explained that the real value lay in the level of security, which was indispensable in their current situation. In a quiet room, Ryuwon sat anxiously beside Ryumin, who lay motionless. Ryuwon's thoughts revealed. On the first day of each month, all players fall into a deep coma, at which time they are at their weakest. Not only natural disasters like fires or earthquakes are threats, but more frightening are assassins hired by other players, those who can strike when they are completely helpless. Ryumin seriously considered the impending danger. He understood that on the first day of each month, players enter a forced coma state. That is when they are most vulnerable, and if not careful, they could die in the real world. With cold eyes, Ryumin asserted, "No matter how strong one is in the other world, if they die in reality, everything ends. Therefore, it is necessary to prepare thoroughly and be in the safest place when entering the other world at that time." Ryumin gently asked his younger brother, Ryuwon, if he liked the house. Ryuwon immediately jumped up, happily replying, "I like it a lot, of course I do." Ryumin smiled, relieved to see Ryuwon happy. But in contrast, Ryuwon suddenly became pensive, as if something heavy weighed on him, falling silent with an unmistakable look of worry. In the quiet space, Ryuwon bowed his head and softly apologized. Ryumin turned around, slightly surprised to hear his brother tremblingly say, "Hyung, I'm sorry." Ryuwon sadly lowered his head, confessing his worries about his brother's future. He felt guilty for being happy while Ryumin had to continue fighting in the other world next month. Just as Ryuwon was feeling remorseful, Ryumin suddenly gave him a strong pat on the back as a somewhat rough reassurance. Ryumin smiled and asked his brother back, "Do you think I can't come back after the next round?" Ryuwon awkwardly replied, "It's just a precaution." Not wanting his brother to remain sad, Ryumin invited Ryuwon to go down for dinner. He mentioned a famous Korean restaurant on the second floor of the shopping area beneath the building. As they were preparing to leave the apartment, Ryumin's phone suddenly vibrated. It seemed a new event was waiting for them ahead. Ryumin received a call and guessed that someone had discovered he had moved. Although a bit surprised, he reassured himself to ignore that person since the chance of meeting in real life was very low. However, Ryumin realized what concerned him most was the caller's identity. Hein Yangmin, someone well acquainted with the other world. That made the situation more worrisome. The next morning, Ryuwon stepped out of his room looking sleepy. He still wasn't fully accustomed to the new life after moving into this luxury apartment. Seeing Ryuwon about to go out, Ryumin immediately asked, "Where are you going?" Ryuwon turned back with a light smile. "Ah, you're up," still holding his jacket. Ryumin realized that danger might be approaching. Even while trying to protect his brother, people like Hein Yangmin remained threats from both the real world and the other world. The young man in a light blue t-shirt had just woken up, standing dazed with a sleepy expression. When he heard Ryumin say he was going to buy rice cakes, he exclaimed in surprise, "Rice cakes!" He silently watched Ryumin leave the house. In his mind, a thought crossed. Ryumin had never done this in previous loops. Although there was regression, things were not always the same. However, Ryumin buying rice cakes was something that had never happened before. He approached and asked directly, "Why rice cakes?" Ryumin replied gently, "Because we just moved in, so we have to share cakes with the neighbors to create goodwill." Thinking for a moment, he nodded in agreement. There's nothing wrong with being a good neighbor. In his heart, he praised Ryumin, as expected of my brother. Ryumin suggested delivering the cakes himself so he could rest. But the young man refused, thinking they should go together to show sincerity. He said he would change clothes and prepare to go out with Ryumin. Ryumin reached out and pressed the doorbell of a new neighbor's apartment, ready to begin the traditional greeting. The bell rang in the quiet hallway. A woman's voice echoed from the intercom. "Who is it?" Ryuwon smiled and answered through the screen. "We are the new neighbors who just moved in. We came to say hello." Ryumin stood behind, holding a gift box. The door opened, and a middle-aged woman with a kind smile stepped out. She politely responded, "Nice to meet you." Seeing their similar faces, the neighbor immediately guessed. "You two are siblings, right?" Ryuwon confirmed with a bright smile. "Yes, we are brothers." Ryumin and Ryuwon continued their greeting tour to the residence in the new apartment complex. They rang doorbells politely and formally, carrying simple but sincere gifts. When the bell rang, a voice from the answering device asked, "Who is it?" A familiar question marking the start of a new encounter. Ryuwon beamed brightly, introducing, "Hello, ma'am. We are the new neighbors who just moved in. We came to say hello." Ryuman stood behind, holding a gift box, maintaining a serious but friendly demeanor. The middle-aged woman opened the door, smiling warmly. "Oh, nice to meet you both." She showed friendliness and openness, creating a warm atmosphere for the first meeting. The neighbor happily accepted the plate of rice cakes that Ryuwon offered. "You brought rice cakes for me? They taste best when eaten warm." The small gesture, full of affection, made her very grateful. Ryuman bent down to hand rice cakes to a neighboring boy. The mother beside him smiled gently, telling her son to say thank you. The boy shyly accepted the cake and bowed politely. The elevator stopped at the 44th floor. Wonnie sighed tiredly, but still encouraged himself and his brother to try one more apartment. Ryuman agreed, and both were determined to complete their greeting rounds. Ryuman revealed to Wonnie that this floor was the penthouse area, occupying both the 44th and 45th floors. Wonnie was amazed, guessing that the apartment owner must be very wealthy. While Ryuman pressed the doorbell, Wonnie speculated that the resident here might be the child of a tycoon or a celebrity. The brothers showed curiosity about the identity of their last neighbor. The door remained silent. No one answered. Ryuman guessed that perhaps the owner was not home, ending the brothers' greeting tour. Ryuman patiently pressed the doorbell once more, after waiting for a response from the last apartment. Ryuwon lightly scratched his neck, thinking maybe no one was home. Ryuman stood with arms crossed behind him, observing the situation suspiciously. A sound from inside startled Ryuwon, who quickly turned around. His expression immediately became tense and shocked. Both Ryuman and Ryuwon were stunned. Ryuwon exclaimed, that person," with wide eyes in astonishment. A beautiful woman with an elegant aura stepped out of the elevator. It was the famous actress Seoarin. She wore a stylish white blouse and a classy brown skirt, followed by a man in a black suit. The door opened, and a striking woman stepped out into the hallway. The light shining down made her wavy brown hair glow brilliantly, none other than the famous actress Seoarin. Ryuwon stared, his eyes wide with amazement. He whispered to his older brother in awe, "So beautiful, like an angel." Just as Ryuman and Ryuwon hadn't yet reacted, a strong arm reached out to block them, causing both to startle and step back. The man in the black suit, Seoarin's bodyguard, stepped forward with a wary look. He asked coldly, "Who are you? Are you her fans?" Ryuman stayed calm, replying with slight confusion, We just moved to the floor below." The brothers' eyes still didn't leave the stunning beauty of the actress before them. The bodyguard in the black suit was surprised to hear the two boys say they had just moved to the floor below. His gaze was full of suspicion, but he maintained a polite demeanor. Ryuman smiled warmly, offering some cake and explaining that they had only come to introduce themselves as new neighbors. However, the bodyguard quickly interrupted, refusing bluntly. He coldly said that his lady did not eat such things, then turned and walked into the house. The atmosphere became awkward as the bodyguard swiped his card to open the penthouse door. His decisive gesture clearly marked boundaries and distance. Before entering, the bodyguard leaned slightly and invited Seoarin in with a single word. "Please." Seoarin seemed a bit hesitant, then gently nodded and followed him inside. Seoarin and the bodyguard entered the apartment, Arin's face showing a hint of embarrassment. She said nothing, quietly looking toward Ryuman and Ryuwon. Ryuwon angrily remarked that the bodyguard had been too rude despite not knowing who they were. Ryuman stood beside him, his eyes still showing surprise. Ryuman reassured his younger brother, "Wonnie, don't pay attention to people like that." Ryuwon was still upset but nodded slightly. Immediately after, Ryuwon suddenly changed his mood, his face lighting up as he turned to his brother excitedly. "See, it's amazing." Ryuman asked confusedly, "Amazing what?" His expression still didn't understand why his younger brother was so happy. Ryuman suddenly grabbed Youngmin, anxiously asking, "You saw her too, right?" The excitement made Ryuman unable to hold back, while Youngmin still didn't understand what was happening. Ryuman loudly explained, "That's Seoarin, it's Seoarin." Youngmin stood silently, his face cold, asking indifferently, "Seoarin, who's that?" An online news article appeared in Ryuman's mind. The headline emphasized, "Actor Gwang Minyu temporarily halts filming due to anxiety." The chaotic entertainment news made Ryuman even more worried about the current situation. Inside the luxurious penthouse apartment, Seoarin sat quietly on the sofa, sunlight streaming through the large glass window. She sighed, her eyes fixed on her phone screen as if waiting or worrying about something deep inside. A close-up of Seoarin's thoughtful face. Sweat dotted her skin, she bit her lip, gripping her phone tightly, silently thinking, "What is happening to this world?" Anxiety surrounded her in the seemingly peaceful room. Seoarin's phone vibrated with a message from Hong Xiana, reporting that actor Gwang Minyu was temporarily stopping filming Criminal Land due to anxiety. She stared intently at the headline as if sinking into heavy thoughts. Another message appeared. Gung Xiajin Sunbi has passed away. Arin sighed and replied briefly, yeah. The sadness was clear in every word she typed. The conversation continued. Her friend asked if Arin would attend the funeral tomorrow. She agreed, recalling that Gung Xiajin had cared for them a lot. The friend offered to go together and she responded, all right. Arin put her phone down on the table, her eyes heavy with worry. She thought about the seniors more famous than her, those who also couldn't survive the first round. Arin stood up, her gaze full of doubt and silence. She thought, if it weren't for the rune, I might have been one of the names on today's news. Arin sighed softly, her heart heavy as she reflected on the past. She mocked herself, thinking she had become famous because at least if she died, her name would appear in the news. She continued to think more deeply. Without sponsorship contracts, could she have come this far? Even the current penthouse was provided to her, making her feel like she was living in a borrowed world. The bodyguard beside her gently inquired, addressing her politely as RNSSI. Startled, Arin quickly avoided eye contact and replied that nothing significant was going on in her mind. The bodyguard did not press but gently reassured her, saying she could share anything if she wanted. He was always ready to listen to her, with a calm and protective attitude. Arin finally spoke. She confessed that she was troubled by the chaotic state of the world and feared for herself when thinking about how to survive the next round. It was a silent worry, but weighed heavily every day. Arin's bodyguard reassured her, saying there was no need to worry about the next round. With him by her side, there was nothing to fear. He continued advising Arin to stop overthinking and instead trust and rely on him. Arin smiled gently, replying that if not for him, she didn't know who else she could trust now. Arin recalled when the company assigned him as her bodyguard. At first, she was suspicious, thinking he was only there to monitor her. But then she remembered the deadly first round. He was the one who fought to protect her among the monsters. Without him, Arin would have died in round 1. Arin's bodyguard looked at her seriously, reassuring her with strong words. I will protect you at all costs, so don't give up. His eyes showed absolute determination. Arin smiled, her eyes shining with gratitude. She replied softly, yes, thank you very much. Genuine emotion was clear in her words. Cut to the balcony, Arin chatted with the bodyguard in a more relaxed tone. She mentioned earlier about the new neighbors who moved in below. She said the rice cake they brought looked delicious. The bodyguard coldly retorted, you'll gain weight if you eat those. Arin defended the neighbors, saying they were just being kind. She worried that refusing might hurt their feelings. However, the bodyguard disagreed, believing that kindness always had an ulterior motive. The bodyguard bluntly said that the new neighbors were just trying to get something back from them. He thought if they accepted the cake, they would be bothered continuously. Arin was silent, her eyes following him with concern. Arin pondered about the two new neighbors. In her mind, they didn't seem like bad people. They even left a good impression. Arin recalled their meeting, remembering that one of them looked quite mature and might have survived the deadly challenge by killing hundreds of goblins. She and the bodyguard agreed that was possible. She couldn't help but admire someone who had gone through such a brutal experience yet remained calm. Arin's eyes were full of admiration mixed with confusion. Arin's bodyguard, a calm man in a black suit, dismissed that glorification, saying killing goblins wasn't difficult, those who failed were just fools. Arin didn't fully agree. In her heart, although the bodyguard was strong, he still couldn't match the standards of the other world. She began to sense something different, something beyond strength. In Arin's memory, no one could compare to the overwhelming power of the mysterious young man. With the skills Black Slash and Black Scythe, he easily wiped out hordes of goblins. She even felt pity for the monsters as she watched him fight. Seeing the young man's calm demeanor, Arin guessed he must have a job in real life. She wondered, what kind of life does someone like that actually live? Deep down, she believed that if she went with him, she would survive the second round. After the moment of recollection, Arin clenched her fists. Although lucky to survive the first round, she still felt uneasy about the next challenge. Would she have the ability to overcome it? On the morning of January 31st, at 11 o'clock, fresh air and sunlight filled the apartment. A vacuum cleaner silently glided across the floor, evoking a peaceful feeling before the coming storm. Ryumin, the main character, was vacuuming, his face bright under the midday light. After fierce battles, this simple everyday moment brought a humane contrast to the harsh world they were living in. Ryumin returned home after finishing work, calling out loudly, "Wonnie, I'm home." He smiled as he saw Ryuwon, his younger brother, step out from the hallway and cheerfully greeted him. "Hi, young, glad you're back." While Ryuman was putting away his things, Ryuwon curiously asked, "Did you get the money?" Ryuman calmly replied that he only got about 15 billion, surprising his brother since last time it was 17 billion. Ryuwon asked in surprise, "Didn't the bank say anything? This is the 4th time already." Ryuman just smiled indifferently, not caring about the suspicious looks from others. Recalling the scene at the bank, a middle-aged employee with a confused and surprised expression looked at Ryuman. "You, again?" It seemed Ryuman's repeated appearances had drawn special attention there. At the bank, the middle-aged man showed extreme surprise upon seeing Ryuman again. He asked incredulously, "You're here again?" Unable to hide his curiosity, he asked Ryuman for the secret to winning. Ryuman smiled and gave a cryptic answer. "I told you last week, it comes to me in my dreams." The bank employee showed admiration mixed with envy. "That's amazing. I wish I could have dreams like that." Ryuman could only force a smile, unsure how to respond to the man's innocent honesty. Back home, Ryuwon immediately asked, "Are you going to put all the money into Bitcoin again?" Ryuman replied decisively, "Yeah, now it's up to 150 billion. Worried about market fluctuations, Ryuwon suggested selling early. "Hi, young, maybe we should sell? I'm afraid the price will drop." But Ryuman gently replied, "Not yet." Ryuman turned back to reassure his younger brother. With confident eyes, he said he would handle everything and wouldn't let Ryuwon worry anymore. Then he invited him to go eat together. The two brothers sat eating in a quiet restaurant. Ryuwon and Ryuman enjoyed an ordinary moment, savoring their meal together in a warm and intimate atmosphere. In the evening, Ryuman and Ryuwon strolled down the street. Ryuman held a bag of bread, Ryuwon ate ice cream, both walking and chatting happily. The streetlights and passing crowds highlighted the rare peace amid chaotic days. Late at night on January 31st, at 11:55 p.m., the two brothers were home. Ryuwon sat on the bed while Ryuman held his hand, his eyes conveying reassurance before the fateful hour of the next round. Ryuwon softly called "Hyung" and squeezed his older brother's hand. That moment expressed deep affection between them, Ryuwon's absolute trust in Ryuman, whom he always relied on to overcome every danger. Ryuman held his younger brother's hand tightly in silence, his eyes tense and worried. Ryuwon, though weak but determined, whispered, "You have to come back safely." Ryuman smiled softly, trying to reassure his younger brother. He recalled the victory over Bang Tiju as proof that he was strong enough to survive. But Ryuwon was still anxious. Ryuwon gently stroked his brother's head, trying to hide his emotions in rare tenderness. He advised Ryuman to sleep early instead of worrying constantly. Before falling asleep, Ryuwon softly said, "When I wake up, you will wake up too. See you again." His hand lightly touched Ryuman's cheek, a simple caress full of trust. Ryuman's figure gradually merged into the bright golden light. He was transitioning to the next challenge round. The moment of passage between two worlds began. At 11:55 p.m. on January 31st, Ryuman's body began to glow. A strange golden light flared up, enveloping him and a group of others in gray-brown uniforms. They were being transported to an unfamiliar place. In the blink of an eye, everyone was brought to a gloomy forest. A buzz-cut male student looked confused, and a short-haired girl anxiously asked, "What just happened?" Everyone was stunned by the completely different scenery compared to the first round. Amid the spreading surprise, a girl immediately recognized someone in the crowd, Ryuman. She shouted in astonishment, "He's the one who ranked first last round, the Black Scythe." All eyes turned to Ryuman. Though silent, he realized his presence caused caution. In his mind, he thought, "It seems everyone recognizes me. They are keeping their distance." A tall young man with neatly cut black hair and sharp eyes stepped out from the crowd, silently observing. He confirmed, "It seems everyone has arrived." Ryuman quietly observed, his glowing red eyes reflecting a calculating anticipation. Thoughts echoed in his mind. "I wonder when she will appear." A new angel appeared, descending amid radiant light and white feathers flying everywhere. She had large wings, golden braided hair draped to one side, and a pure, dazzling golden outfit. The crowd of players was confused by the change. A brown-haired male student and a brown-haired girl exclaimed in surprise, this was not the angel from the first round. "What's going on?" they asked each other anxiously. The new angel smiled and announced, "The angel in charge of the first round had an accident and cannot come." The crowd buzzed. Someone in the crowd repeated in surprise, "An accident." Maintaining calm, the angel reassured, "But do not panic, humans." Her voice echoed like a holy decree from above. With a serious expression, the angel bowed slightly. From now on, I will be your guide. Bright golden light swirled around, spreading sacred authority throughout the space. With large wings spread wide across the sky, the angel spoke. Now that everyone is here, a whirlwind of light poured down from the sky, preparing for a new beginning. Under the sacred light, the players looked up tensely. Ryumin gripped the weapon at his side as the angel declared, I will speak about the mission for round 2.